Hey, welcome to another session here of Skin Dog Boxing. We're going to break down the big fight tomorrow night. We got Errol Spence Jr. against Terence Crawford. And I know the world's been waiting for this fight for quite some time. And it's finally here. We're less than 24 hours away here. And so, yeah, basically I'm going to be breaking down the fight here. And we'll start off next here with the tail of the tape so you can see. So the age is here. So, Crawford looks like he's 2 years older, but he's had 10 more pro fights and 10 more wins. Both guys are undefeated, so someone's always going to probably have to go here. And then you can see Crawford has about 7 more knockouts in his fights, but he's also had 10 more fights. Spence has got him by about an inch. And the weights, they weighed in tonight, and so basically there's like a 1 pound difference. So to spend less than 1 pound, so they're within about a half a pound of each other. So no real difference there. Definitely Crawford's got the reach advantage by 2 inches, and which isn't a lot. And yeah, so I kind of got this one broken down here, but you can see Errol's got all the belts right now except for the WBO, which really isn't regarded as like, the most desirable of the belts. It's more like the least desirable. But yeah, this fight's for all the marbles right here. And yeah, so I got it all broken down there so you can see kind of get broken down by category here. So as far as the speed goes, I'm going to give that to definitely to Crawford. And as far as the power goes, I mean, both, well, let's go back to speed. Both guys have a lot of speed, but, there's definitely no question in my mind that Bud's the quicker of the two. And when we watch him, throw the punches, he's definitely the more sharper, more precise puncher of the two guys. And then when it comes down to power, I mean, both guys have a lot of power. Like, this is a really hard one to put an X on either guy's name because, Errol, of course, would probably be considered the most powerful puncher for the division. But at the same time, Crawford's, all of his fights at 147 have been wins by either KO or TKO. So you can't, it's hard to say. But I mean, if I'm just going to go by like sheer, like blunt force trauma or whatever, I'm going to say Spence on that one. But I want to put like a little asterisk here on this one because if there's a difference there, it's not by much, and we'll go over that a little bit later. In terms of defense, I mean, both guys have good defense. I think in terms of Crawford, he's more like a little bit of elusive, or he's got a little bit better head movement. But sometimes he does get caught with his guard down, whereas Spence has less head movement, but he has a really good high guard, so he tends to maybe not get caught with a whole lot of punches. And one of the fights that really stood out for me for Spence is when he fought Danny Garcia. Even though they had the equal number of power punches, the way that he was able to negate Danny's left hook in that fight really impressed me because Danny really barely even landed that punch, and that was probably the difference in the fight right there. So I'm going to give defense to Spence. Not that Crawford has bad defense for sure. But he has been caught a few times, and that brings us to the next category, which is the chin. And honestly, I think both guys are a little bit suspect here. I mean, definitely, as we know, Crawford was, made to do the chicken dance by Yorkie Gamboa, and but he'd recovered and he won the fight, dominatingly. And as far as Spence goes, I mean, I would say like, in his last couple of fights, he showed some vulnerabilities there, like Danny Garcia in the 11th round, last about 20 seconds. Cracked Spence pretty good, knocked his mouthpiece out. Spence did kind of almost a 360, and then the bell basically saved him, but he looked definitely dazed by that punch, and had that round gone on another, 10 or 20 seconds, that could have spelled a lot of trouble for Spence right there. So, and then it happened again when Spence fought Ugas. Yeah, so, and that one was even a little bit more shaky on Spence's part because, he got drilled, and then the mouthpiece came out. He basically went up against the ropes, and he was kind of all over the place. And then the referee did a bad job in that one, and he, you're supposed to wait until there's like a break in the action before you put the mouthpiece back in, but the referee didn't do that. He did it almost instantly, and basically taking away the advantage that Ugas had deserved in that round, and that definitely could have been the changing factor in the real outcome of that fight, because really it was a knockdown in my mind, because the only thing that was holding Spence up was the ropes when he got knocked back like that. And yeah, so I'd say both guys are not the best chin, and so that could make this fight pretty interesting. So I'm gonna give the slight nod to Spence on that one, but I'm gonna put another asterisk here because I think there's very little margin of difference right there. And especially with Spence's recent car crash and stuff like that a couple of years ago, it's hard to say in that category. But like I said, we'll give Spence the benefit of the doubt on that one. As far as stamina goes, I'm definitely going to give that to Terence. And the reason why, well, I thought that Spence faded down the stretch against Danny. He built up an early lead, and then Danny started coming back in the later rounds, and he was fading a bit there. So I think Terence seems to get stronger as the fight progresses. So I've never really seen any signs of Terence's stamina diminishing. So then we're going to come down to experience, which that's kind of an interesting one because Spence definitely has the more experience in terms of overall fights. So he's got an amateur record of like 125, and actually I think it was 135 wins and 12 losses. And Crawford has 10 more pro fights, but Crawford he was like 58 and 12 as an amateur, and so Spence had more than twice as many amateur fights, and they had the same amount of losses in those fights. So definitely Spence is the better amateur fighter, but I'm going to give experience to Spence. And then now we're going to come down to footwork. Yeah, so yeah, definitely Crawford there, no question about that. Spence, when you watch him, he looks pretty robotic, and his foot movement definitely isn't the greatest. It's not bad, but it's definitely not the greatest. It's not nowhere on the level of Terence Crawford or like Manny Pacquiao or anything like that. When it comes to reach, we already know that Bud has a 2-inch reach advantage. And when it comes to technical, this is kind of where it gets interesting. I think that definitely Terence is the more technical of the two fighters. Spence is a lot more basic. Just kind of he's straight there in front of you. He kind of pressures you. He leads with the jab. He throws some right lefts and some 1-2s. Occasionally a 1-2-3 goes to the body sometimes, but nothing real crazy and like overly technical. We're just going to kind of like befuddle somebody. But Terence, on the other hand, the way he switches from orthodox to southpaw, and the different many different angles and combination punches that he does, he's definitely the more technical, trickier of the two guys. When it comes down to the coach, it's kind of hard to say on that one. Derek James, Spence's coach, he was trainer of the year or whatever last year, and maybe even two years in a row. I'm not too sure on that one. He was a former pro fighter, but not like a really great one. Honestly, I don't really know too much about Crawford's coach, but one of the things that I noticed just in looking at his amateur record versus his pro record, it's quite a difference. I don't know when he got involved with Bomac, but my guess would be probably as a pro, because he totally changed. Because he lost fights against notable guys in the amateurs, and some guys that he probably should have beat, he lost to. So definitely as a pro, he's been flawless. So I think there definitely must have been some kind of a change, and I think Bomac might have been part of that. So if I had to lean one way or the other, I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm gonna say, let's just count that one even. Even if I had to lean one way, I would lean towards Bomac. And then intangibles, definitely the intangibles, you got to give to Crawford. And, he just does so many different things in there. and the way that he comes at you at different angles, and I think he's just the more versatile of the two guys, to where he could throw something intangible at you that he wouldn't see coming. Whereas Spence, he's just kind of straightforward, doesn't do anything too crazy. So I'm going to give that to Crawford too. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me count this with you. Start over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 7 X's, and we got 2 asterisks here. And then for Spence, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 X's. So there's the difference right there. So the paper's saying that Crawford's going to win this fight. And so now let's talk about how Spence could win this fight. I think for Spence, his natural thing is to kind of work behind the jab, and I think that's going to work well for him in this fight if he can do that and force Terence to back up. Because against a guy like Terence, he's a fast, he's got good footwork, he's got fast hands, he can throw really good combinations. And a guy like that, you want to push him backwards, and you want to try and get him on the ropes, get him to fight from areas and angles that he doesn't want to, and try to keep him on his heels, so that way he can't fight exactly the way that he wants. And if Errol can, Errol usually comes out pretty strong, and he starts building a lead. And if he can hurt Crawford in the early stages of the fight, that could play an impact on him being able to, to win this fight on points. I don't see Spence winning by knockout. I don't see that. And as far as how Crawford wins the fight, well, Crawford, just the angles, the way he's so technical, and the way he hits you at different angles, and so just from he kind of fills you out in the orthodox stance, and then somehow is able to switch after finding your weaknesses and taking you out of there. So he's really is a killer in there. And I think the way that Crawford wins is with his combination punching. He kind of, in some ways with his speed, he kind of reminds me of Sugar Ray Leonard, but obviously Leonard was an orthodox fighter. But the way that he's able to throw like those 4, 5, and 6 punch combinations, and the last of those punches of that combination you don't see coming, and those are the ones that knock you out. And so that's why I'm going to make a prediction here towards the end here, so we'll get to that part. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the judging for the fight and the A side, B side. I think that hopefully the judging's fair. I think that in the last like 10 or so years, I think that boxing's changed a little bit, and they came up with this whole A side, B side. Kind of creates an unfairness for the B side. Definitely saw shades of that when Spence fought Danny Garcia. In the past, years past, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was no A side, B side. It was just, the A side guy was the one who got paid more money, but everything else was kind of equal. The commentating, the judging, you kind of had to take the title from the champ kind of a thing. That changed, kind of like after the Sugar Ray Leonard era. When we fought Hagler, things started to change then. But, definitely I hope that the judging's fair on this one. But the thing is, if it's not, it's definitely going to lean towards the side of Spence, being the A side. And, when he fought Danny Garcia, I thought that, the fight was a lot closer than how they had it judged and how the commentators commentated the fight. Danny was really coming back at the end of that fight, and they didn't even really talk about it. So that was kind of disappointing. So I think, if Terence is going to win this one, he's going to have to, he's going to have to win it by knockout or by landslide in the round, And then, for the winner of this one, let's see here. Let me just break this down. So that's who I got as the winner right there. And so I hope you guys enjoyed the segment here, and enjoy the fight. Peace.